This video introduces Greenland by exploring its geopolitical importance, natural resources, and complex history with Denmark and other countries. It emphasizes the growing interest of major powers, especially the United States and China, in the island because of its strategic location in the Arctic, its rich mineral resources, and potential new trade routes as the ice melts. We will also touch on historical aspects, such as Danish colonization and the controversial social experiments that affected the indigenous Inuit population, as well as repeated U.S. attempts to acquire the island. Ultimately, the video presents Greenland as a territory with great but as yet unrealized potential, facing questions of independence and choices between different external influences. Chapter 1. Meet Greenland. A mighty island with a harsh personality. If islands could compete in a Mr. Universe contest, Greenland would take the top prize. It's the world's largest island. Yes, even bigger than Australia, though Australia is classified as a continent. But let's be real, Greenland isn't exactly the type to say, "Hey, come on in, make yourself at home." No, it's more like a brooding biker wrapped in fur and ice, keeping its distance. Picture this. About 80% of its land is buried under a massive ice sheet. And we're not talking about a light dusting of snow you can shovel away. No, this is a colossal frozen shield, hiding land that has barely changed for centuries. That's why the climate here is not for the faint of heart. The lowest temperature ever recorded in the northern hemisphere, a bone-chilling minus 93 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 69.6 degrees Celsius. In fact, Greenland's average temperature is lower than just about anywhere else on Earth. So, if you're dreaming of a tropical getaway, you might want to rethink that. Your swimsuit won't see much use here. But here's the fascinating part. Despite its vast expanse, almost nothing grows here. Well, almost nothing. You'll find tiny dwarf trees, mosses, and lichens, but forget about forests. And as for farming, that's like trying to grow tomatoes in a freezer. Because of this, the locals have long adapted to a different way of living. Their diet revolves around fish, seals, whales, and even polar bears. Yes, really. Ever tried walrus brain? It's not a joke. You can find such delicacies in local markets. And you know what's even more surprising? For all its vastness, Greenland is home to just a handful of people. If you gathered the entire population of the capital in a single stadium, you'd still have plenty of empty seats. There are fewer people here than in Andorra, a tiny country most people don't even think about. Yet, Greenland is the size of 3 Texases, or all of Western Europe. That makes it one of the least densely populated places on Earth, a frozen desert where ice replaces sand. But that's precisely what makes Greenland so intriguing and captivating. It's as if the island is saying, "I'm not for everyone, but those who truly see me will find something special." And indeed, once you look beyond the icy facade, you'll discover a world of history, culture, and extraordinary possibilities. But more on that later. Chapter 2. A History of Survival, from Vikings to the Inuit. If you think Greenland is just a giant block of ice that's never seen much action, think again. This land has a rich and complex history that stretches back long before anyone had ever heard of Netflix, or even electricity. So, let's take a deep dive into the past and see how this harsh island became home to various peoples and cultures. The first settlers, ancient Eskimos and their footprints. Greenland's history begins with its first tenants. Around the 7th or 8th century BCE, the island saw the arrival of the Paleo-Eskimo culture. These were true survivalists, masters at making the most of extreme conditions. They didn't leave behind grand palaces or towering temples, probably because they had more pressing concerns. But archaeologists have uncovered whale bones and primitive tools, evidence that these early settlers relied on hunting and fishing to survive. Later, in the early centuries CE, the Sakolk culture emerged, followed by other ancient groups like Independence Wars and the Dorset Bury's culture. These folks weren't in it for comfort, but they laid the foundation for the modern Inuit, the indigenous people of Greenland. So, if you ever meet an Inuit, remember, their ancestors were the ultimate survival experts, thriving where most of us wouldn't last a week. The Vikings arrive? Well, almost. But things got really interesting with the arrival of the Vikings. Yes, those long-haired warriors with massive axes and a very distinct sense of fashion. In 877 CE, Eric the Red, who had been exiled from Iceland for murder, accidentally stumbled upon Greenland. Maybe he was looking for a new place to hide from his enemies, or maybe he just wanted to make a statement. Either way, he decided to name this icy land Greenland, possibly as a clever marketing ploy to attract settlers. Let's be honest though, the only green things here are patches of lichen. The Vikings quickly began settling on the island, establishing communities and trading goods like walrus ivory and animal skins, which were highly prized in Europe. They even built Greenland's first church. Eric's son, Leif Erikson, later became famous for discovering Vinland, the land we now call Canada. You could say the Erikson family were early pioneers of globalization, even if they didn't quite realize it at the time. Denmark takes the helm. Things were going well until the climate had other plans. The Little Ice Age, outbreaks of plague, and conflicts with the Inuit eventually led to the near disappearance of Viking settlements by the 15th century. But Greenland's story didn't end there. In 1261, the Viking settlers swore allegiance to the King of Norway, and when Norway united with Denmark in 1380, Greenland came under Danish rule. By the 16th to 18th centuries, Danish whalers were actively operating in Greenland's waters. By the 19th century, Danish settlers were moving into the northern regions. However, Denmark's approach to the Inuit was relatively hands-off compared to other colonial powers. While major decisions were still made in Copenhagen, local Greenlanders were allowed to elect representatives to the Danish parliament. This helped preserve Inuit culture, which remains a defining part of Greenland's identity today. What's next? So, Greenland's journey has taken it from ancient Eskimo cultures to Viking explorers and Danish rule. Each group has left its mark, shaping the island's unique identity. But as we'll see in the next chapter, Greenland's political history is a whole other story, one filled with dramatic turns and tough choices. Chapter 3. Politics and Autonomy. Who really runs Greenland? If you think Greenland is just a distant land where snowflakes and polar bears call the shots, think again. Yes, it's covered in ice and home to the Inuit, but its political system is no joke. The real question is, who actually runs this island? To understand that, let's dive into Greenland's history with Denmark and explore its modern push for greater independence. Autonomy, with a Danish twist. Greenland is not an independent country. It is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, meaning Denmark still plays a major role in its governance. But that doesn't mean Greenland is just a Danish colony. Far from it. The island has its own flag, a striking red and white design featuring a sun-like disc, a coat of arms, a parliament, and even a prime minister. On the surface, it looks like a fully fledged nation, but the most critical decisions, especially in foreign policy and defense, are still made in Copenhagen. Why does Denmark have a say over this massive island? The answer lies in history. As we know, the Vikings were the first Europeans to settle in Greenland. Later, when Denmark and Norway were united, Denmark solidified its claim over the island. When Denmark lost Norway in the 19th century, Greenland remained under Danish control. In many ways, it's a Viking legacy that continues to shape the modern political map. Danish subsidies, a blessing or a burden. Today, Denmark provides about half of Greenland's budget through subsidies, a significant amount of money, especially for an island with just 57,000 people. The reality is that without these funds, Greenland would face serious economic challenges. Nearly everything essential for daily life, food, fuel, technology, has to be imported from Denmark. The local economy simply isn't strong enough to sustain itself independently, but such dependence comes at a cost. Many Greenlanders feel like teenagers still living at home. They receive an allowance, but they don't have full control over how it's spent. This has fueled a growing desire for independence. Polls show that more than half of the population supports complete separation from Denmark. People want to manage their own natural resources and chart their own future. Historical scars and lingering tensions. The relationship between Greenland and Denmark is also complicated by painful historical events. In the 1960s and 1970s, the Danish government secretly implemented a birth control program that involved inserting intrauterine devices, IUDs, into Inuit women and girls, often without their consent. The goal was to limit birth rates among the indigenous population. Additionally, there was a program that sent Inuit children to Denmark to assimilate them into Danish culture. Many of these children lost touch with their language, heritage, and families, leading to lasting trauma. It's no surprise that such events have created distrust between Greenland and Denmark. Rather than strengthening ties, they have fueled the island's desire for self-determination. Today, many Inuit take pride in their unique culture and fight to preserve it despite external pressures. The battle for resources. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Greenland's vast natural resources. The island sits on a literal gold mine, in every sense of the word. It has everything from rare earth metals to oil and gas. These riches make Greenland a highly attractive target for global powers like the United States and China. The US, for instance, supports Greenland's push for greater autonomy, but is also keen on keeping China's influence at bay. In 2022, an American company, Critical Metals, acquired a mining license from a Chinese firm, signaling that the U.S. is willing to take drastic steps to maintain control over strategic resources. China, on the other hand, is actively trying to invest in Greenland's infrastructure, including airports and mining operations. But its efforts often face resistance due to pressure from the U.S. In effect, tiny Greenland has become a key battleground in a global geopolitical struggle. What's next? Greenland's political situation is a mix of autonomy, dependence, and a strong desire for independence. The island is in a unique position. Its future depends on a delicate balance between internal politics and external pressures from major powers. What will happen next? Can Greenland achieve full independence, or will its resources make it a permanent focal point for global competition? We'll explore these questions in the next chapter, where we'll dive into the island's economy and its role in the modern Arctic race. Chapter 4. The Economy, Fishermen, Rare Earth Metals, and Danish Subsidies. If Greenland's economy were a person, you could describe it as a guy with big ambitions but limited resources, for now. The island has enormous potential thanks to its natural wealth, but at the moment, its economic reality remains quite modest. However, don't be fooled by appearances. Beneath the surface lies a complex story of tradition, modern challenges, and geopolitical interests. Fishing, the lifeblood of the economy. Let's start with what truly drives Greenland's economy. Fishing and seafood harvesting aren't just hobbies here, they're a way of life. Shrimp, crabs, cod, and other fish make up the majority of Greenland's exports. In fact, the fishing industry accounts for about 90% of the island's external trade. If Greenland's fishermen formed a union, they could rightfully say, "Without us, this island would be broke." But there's a problem. Relying so heavily on one industry makes the economy vulnerable. What happens if climate change or overfishing depletes these resources? That's a serious concern. Many Greenlanders understand that diversifying the economy is essential to avoid being left stranded if the seafood bonanza ever dries up. Gold and mining, small steps, big potential. Beyond fishing, Greenland has another source of revenue, gold. Yes, the shiny stuff that bankers and jewelers love. The island has only one gold mine in operation, but it already demonstrates that Greenland has real potential in the mining industry. And gold is just the tip of the iceberg, literally. Greenland is sitting on a treasure trove of valuable minerals. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the island holds deposits of 43 out of 50 critical minerals, including rare earth metals, copper, diamonds, graphite, nickel, titanium, zinc, and even uranium. One known uranium deposit in Greenland is larger than the total reserves in the United States. Older studies also suggest that billions of barrels of untapped oil and gas may lie beneath the island's icy surface. So, why hasn't Greenland tapped into these resources yet? The answer is simple: extreme weather, a lack of infrastructure, and high extraction costs. But that could change as the ice sheets melt. Scientists predict that in the coming decades, accessing these resources will become easier and cheaper. When that happens, Greenland could experience its own gold rush. Melting ice, new opportunities and challenges. Finally, let's talk about one of the most significant factors shaping Greenland's future, the melting Arctic ice. On one hand, it could make resource extraction easier and reduce costs. On the other hand, it brings new challenges. Greenland will need to attract a large workforce from abroad, which could lead to major social changes. Moreover, melting ice could position Greenland as a key player in Arctic shipping routes. Shorter transit times between major European and Asian ports via the Northwest Passage could significantly cut costs and boost the island's strategic and economic importance. What's next? Greenland's economy is a blend of tradition, potential, and challenges. It depends on fishing and Danish subsidies, but it also holds massive untapped wealth in natural resources. The island's future will depend on how it navigates these opportunities and resists external pressures from global powers. Can Greenland transform into a self-sustaining economic powerhouse? We'll discuss that in the next chapter, where we'll explore its role in the ever-intensifying Arctic race. Chapter 5. Geopolitics. Why the US, China, and Russia are so interested in Greenland. If Greenland were a character in a geopolitical drama, it would undoubtedly be the lead. This vast island, with its harsh climate and abundant resources, has become a magnet for the world's major powers. And while its population could fit in a small town or two, global interest in the region is growing exponentially. The reason? Greenland isn't just a frozen wasteland. It's a strategic hotspot that could shape the future of the Arctic and, perhaps, the entire world. Why is Greenland so important? Let's start with its geography. The island sits at the heart of the Arctic, where the interests of Russia, the US, Canada, Norway, and Denmark converge. Greenland lies along the shortest air routes between North America and Russia, making it a critical location for early warning missile defense systems. For example, the US military base at Thule, America's northernmost outpost, plays a vital role in continental security. But that's not all. Greenland is also part of the emerging Arctic trade routes. Melting ice is opening up the Northern Sea Route along Russia's coast, and the Northwest Passage along Canada's, which could slash shipping times and costs between Europe, Asia, and North America. Controlling these routes is like holding a golden ticket. Everyone wants one, but there aren't enough to go around. The US. Protecting its interests. The US has long considered Greenland part of its sphere of influence. Its interest dates back to the 19th century when Secretary of State William Seward proposed buying Greenland alongside Alaska. Though Congress only approved the latter, America's fascination with Greenland never faded. During the World War II, the US used the island as a staging ground for European operations. After the war, President Harry Truman even offered Denmark $100 million for Greenland, a deal that was politely declined. Still, the US maintained its military presence, and Thule remains a linchpin in missile defense today. Now, America's focus has shifted to Greenland's natural resources, particularly rare earth metals. These elements are essential for modern electronics and defense systems, but China currently dominates their production. Greenland offers the US a chance to reduce this dependency, a priority underscored when American firm Critical Metals secured mining rights after Chinese investors were blocked. Call it a geopolitical power play, but in this game, the rules are written in real time. China, the quiet but determined player. China may lack Arctic coastline, but that hasn't stopped it from declaring itself a near-Arctic state in its 2018 Arctic strategy. Chinese firms have eyed Greenland's infrastructure projects, from airports to mines, only to face pushback from the US. In 2022, an American company swooped in to acquire Greenlandic mining licenses, a clear message to Beijing, hands off our resources. Yet China persists, leveraging economic tools to expand its Arctic footprint. For Beijing, Greenland isn't just about minerals, it's a stepping stone to global influence. Russia, old ambitions, new battleground. Russia, too, is staking its claim. It's bolstering Arctic military bases, ports, and its grip on the Northern Sea Route, a shortcut growing more accessible as ice recedes. While Moscow hasn't made bold moves in Greenland yet, it's watching closely. Any US or Chinese advance here could shift the balance in a region Russia views as its backyard. The Arctic's future, who comes out on top? Greenland sits at the center of this high-stakes rivalry. Its location, resources, and trade potential make it irresistible. But what's next? Can Greenland achieve true independence, or will outside powers dictate its fate? The answer hinges on how the Arctic's transformation unfolds, a story we'll explore next as we examine the impact of melting ice and climate change. Chapter 6. Transportation. Logistics, getting around. Where there are no roads, if you ever visit Greenland, you'll quickly learn one thing. Life moves differently here. Imagine a place with no roads. Between towns, just vast untouched wilderness. To get from point A to point B, you'll need to ditch the car and embrace helicopters, boats, or even dog sleds. Yes, really. While it might sound like an adventure, this is everyday reality in one of the world's most isolated regions. How do people get around? Greenland's transportation system defies convention, with only about 150 kilometers of roads. Mostly in towns like Nuuk, cars are useless for long distances. In winter, locals rely on snowmobiles or dog sleds across frozen seas, a practice that's functional, not just picturesque. But beware, ice is unpredictable, and a wrong step can be deadly.
Come summer, boats take over. Fishermen navigate fjords like highways, turning vessels into de facto taxis. Meanwhile, air travel is the lifeline. Greenland's 18 airstrips connect key settlements, though storms and fog frequently ground flights. Delays here make Chicago's winter disruptions look mild. Tourists, brace yourself. Flights are pricey, but the aerial views, glaciers, peaks, and endless ice are worth every penny. Hidden highways, submarine internet cables. Less visible but equally vital are the submarine internet cables snaking through Greenland's waters, linking Europe and North America. These data pipelines are so critical that protecting them is a national security priority, especially in an era of cyber conflicts. What lies ahead? If ice retreats further, new shipping lanes like the Northwest Passage could revolutionize trade. But unlocking Greenland's potential demands massive investment in ports, roads, and railways, infrastructure that barely exists today. For remote communities, better transport could mean improved healthcare, education, and connectivity. Yet all this hinges on balancing progress with environmental preservation, a theme we'll revisit in Chapter 7, where melting ice takes center stage. Chapter 7. The Arctic Battle, Greenland's future in a melting world. Greenland is no longer just a frozen frontier. It's a geopolitical hotspot and a climate change bellwether. As ice vanishes, new opportunities and threats emerge, placing the island at the center of a global power struggle. Climate change, double-edged sword. Melting glaciers could unlock mineral riches and trade routes, but the cost is steep. Rising seas threaten coastal communities worldwide, while Greenland's Inuit face disappearing hunting grounds as wildlife migrates. Yet, accessible rare earth metals and fossil fuels might transform its economy, if managed responsibly. Economic crossroads. Today, Greenland leans on fishing and Danish subsidies. Tomorrow, mining could turn it into an Arctic gold rush hub. But this requires billions in infrastructure, roads, ports, housing, and raises tough questions. Who funds it? At what environmental cost? And how will an influx of foreign workers impact local culture? The great power game. The US sees Greenland as a bulwark against China and Russia. China, undeterred by setbacks, keeps probing for economic inroads. Russia, meanwhile, militarizes its Arctic coast, eyeing Greenland as a strategic counterweight. Independence, dream or reality? Greenland's path to self-reliance hinges on 1. Building infrastructure without ecological ruin. 2. Shielding its culture from globalization's tide. 3. Navigating great power rivalries without becoming a pawn. The bottom line: Greenland's fate is tangled in climate change, resource competition, and geopolitics. Its choices will ripple far beyond the Arctic, reminding us that this remote island holds keys to our shared future.